Welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in. Understandably, she's depressed. She's lost her baby and had been doing such a good job, but now she's probably in a bad place.
Yeah, around this time is when she started going more downhill, noticeably.
And when you say downhill, describe that for me.
The job that she had, and she started working for, unfortunately, her boyfriend at the time's company, which didn't help because they're also the ones that had taken her.
So she's now working for the family that has the custody of the child, and she's also around them way more than probably she should be.
Yes. They put her down a lot. They made her feel as if she wasn't better than what they were trying to make her feel. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which didn't help her mental health at all. And she lived far from me. She lived far from our family in Rhode Island because she lived on the other side in North Connecticut. So it was hard because she didn't have me at that point because I was working and whatnot. And she didn't really open up, didn't really communicate very well about everything that was going on at that point.
So she's lost all of her support system at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
And between not having a phone or because she would have minutes back then, the minute phones, or change numbers or broken phones. And
that's common.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's
especially in abusive situations.
Yes. That there was a night, it was not too long after all of that. Me and my mom were together, and we had gotten a phone call because she had gotten into a car accident from drinking and driving.
Oh, no.
That car was mangled. Thank God nobody was killed or anything. But
was she pretty injured?
She only had a few bruised ribs.
Okay.
It was a miracle. That was kind of when we really saw what was more going on because she kind of hid a lot in that point in time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's hard to really tell what was really going on.
Okay, so mom's back in the picture now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, she always tried to stay. She always stayed in the picture. It was just a little more difficult. Like when we lived with our grandparents for us to visit with her because she lived over an hour away.
Oh, okay.
But when we got older, it was easier and when we got our cars, it was easier to go visit with her and spend time with her.
So she gets in the accident. Mm-hmm. Was she hospitalized?
No. So they arrested her.
Okay.
And she was injured. I mean, you could see she was hurting and we took her to the hospital the next morning when they let her out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So she went to jail. And now is this arrest number 1? Or was that the only, or was that like the only arrest? That
was the only one I knew of at that point.
Okay.
I think it might have been the first time that they got involved. A lot of her incidences were more minor, driving without a license.
Okay.
Which was her, I think the courts knew her name because of that.
Okay, gotcha.
Just, I call it ding-dong things.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about what year that was. So we can put that in a reference.
That was around 2010, I would say.
Okay, still.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot happened in that time frame.
So fast forwarding ahead now to she's lost custody of her daughter. Mm-hmm. And what does her life look like between that point and the time that she was hospitalized and eventually passed away. Let's talk about that time frame.
Okay. So we, so in more towards the beginning of all of it, of that time frame, we knew what was going on eventually. She would always tell us, no, I'm fine. Always denied it.
Right.
Always. I mean, and you could see it, especially on her arms and whatnot.
So you're saying that you could see the injection sites on her. Okay.
Yeah.
So those were visible.
Yeah. And I mean, in the summer, she would wear long sleeves and whatnot, or she would cover up her feet, which she never did when we were growing up. She loved sandals. That's a family thing.
Yeah.
You can notice she totally pushed everybody away. Her mental health was not good. I don't want to say didn't think that we weren't there for her, because we were, but she felt like we weren't. You know what I mean?
And what do you think were you having to pull away from her at any point?
Eventually we did.
Okay.
We did do an intervention.
Okay, let's talk about that.
That was around, I want to say 2018-ish.
Okay.
2018 or 2019. It was in between there. We did do an intervention, and she wanted to go.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common.
But the state of Connecticut, even though they had a bed for her and everything, they were making her wait because they couldn't, something to do with the computers for their insurance. And we had to wait and that was on a Friday. By the time we got on Monday, she was already gone. So
you had like a window with her where she was ready?
She was ready.
And then, so I'm going to say, if it makes you feel any better, she probably really wasn't ready if she fled in those 3 days.
Yeah.
Sometimes in those interventions, you have them at a vulnerable moment where they see that their families are hurt, right? I'm going to back you up just a little bit because I know that there was one more child.
Yes.
So I've actually met that young man.
Yes.
So let's go back to that and talk about what life looked like prior to that intervention.
So prior to that, I unfortunately didn't see her much.
Okay.
She kind of pushed away. She always did stay in touch with my mom, though.
Okay.
Which was good.
Yes.
That was really how we knew that she was still okay. That's
to a point, right?
Yes.
Well, still connecting with someone, right?
Yes. The only time she would ever get a hold of me is when she was actually doing better. She would go on her methadone instead of
So there was a time she was actually actively seeking treatment.
Yes.
For MOUD or medication-assisted treatment.
Yes.
Okay.
The way that they have everything set up there is almost as if they're not. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but
no, you're not going to say the wrong thing.
Okay, because they almost have it set up as for people to fail up in that area,
and it can be. I mean, I think we do a better job today with medication-assisted treatment because there's so many different kinds.
Yeah,
but with that class of drugs specifically, or that type of medication-assisted treatment, there is some opportunity for folks who are not ready to completely have recovery in their life to actually use that as an opportunity to sell that for other drugs and so on and so forth. So, I mean, we know that exists. That's if that's not common knowledge to our listeners, it does happen. But I think we like to say that the majority of people that are seeking treatment are there for the right reason.
Yeah.
So do you feel that she was?
I feel like she was.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's good. So she was at a point where she's trying to get treatment.
Yes. A lot of it, and like I said, I wasn't really there in between these times when she would go on methadone. It's the only time I would hear from her.
Okay.
That's how I know either something would happen, either because she never really had a reliable car. So she would miss a dose, have to start all over. Right. And if she missed a dose, she had to find it somewhere else. And it was a vicious cycle.
Yes, it can be.
And
also, sometimes those medications are not affordable.
Yep.
And people miss their dose because, say that's I'll just throw out a number. It's different everywhere you go, but say that was $12 a day for the average person. And a lot of these people have no access to transportation and no access to care and no money. And so they're having to come up with $12 a day. And what does that look like per month? So I can see that.
And having to pay for a ride to get there.
Right.
And most people didn't want to bring others to the clinic.
Yeah.
And that was a problem as well.
Because there's judgment with that too.
Yep. Around the time that she had found out she was pregnant with her son, we had actually spoke. When she found out, she went right on methadone again because she was on the off at that point. And I agreed for her to move in with me.
Okay.
Yeah. So we lived with each other, which we had so much fun. It was like having her back.
That's great. I'm glad you got that opportunity.
Yeah, she was, so she did have a job. She worked at a pizza place at that point, which was great. She did really well doing that. I was able to help her make sure she got her to the clinic every single day, help her with all her prenatals and all of that. And the day she went into labor, it was a snowstorm.
Oh my goodness.
I white knuckled it the whole way there. It felt like I was driving 1,000,000 miles an hour, but I was really going like 20. And put her in a wheelchair. When we got there, I got pictures of us running down the hallway. She's taking a selfie.
Oh, it must feel so good to have like those memories, right?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
That was the best summer. Because I'd bought a pool, so her daughter was able to come and spend most of the summer with us. As long as she was with me or my mom, she was able to have her daughter for visits and whatnot.
That's great. All right, so she's in a better place again. Mm-hmm. And what year do you think this was?
That was 2015, I want to say.
Okay. So 15,
yep.
So she really had a blip in that 5-year period, but then was really mostly good. Mm-hmm. It sounds like in a 5-year period that there was a year that she really wasn't good in between. So, okay, so moving past now, son is born.
Yep.
And let's talk about what from 2015 to that intervention, that 3 years before the 2018 intervention.
So after he was born, she was doing good for a while. I ended up getting a job down in Florida.
Okay.
And I think that kind of me moving away again kind of pushed her.
I sense, and this is something I haven't personally, you and I, when we talk outside of this podcast, clearly, I don't think I ever realized how much guilt like you seem to have in and around leaving. So I want to tell you that you need to be okay to say it's okay. That wasn't my fault. And it's okay to cry because that's something that is a part of like the loss and the grief of all of it. But I can see this, like this is a repetitive thing that you're saying is that, and then I left. So you're taking these timelines. Am I right? Or you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
You're right.
So you're taking the timelines of her relapses around I left for college, I got a job, and now she's got a son, and you have an opportunity to do you. Mm-hmm.
And I almost didn't take it.
but you know, you got to do you, right? So you went and did you. You went to Florida. What? Tell me what you did before we go back.
Well, it was nicer weather. It was in the middle of the winter, so I was down visiting my grandfather because he had 2 strokes, and they needed help down there. So, and Erica was doing great at the time, and she was able to stay in my apartment. So I went down, and I had met some friends, and they were looking for a general manager at their restaurant. So
okay, so you took a good job.
I took it.
Yeah. And all right, so what happened? Let's talk about what happened to Erica.
So I came home and I told her, and unfortunately, it was kind of short notice when I came back and I explained it. And she was happy for me. I mean, she knew I always wanted to go to Florida. I always wanted to move away from the Northeast. And so she knew that. We were able to get her an apartment fairly quickly. So I was able to help her move in. So she did good for a while. And then I didn't hear from her for a while.
All right.
And we had gotten a phone call from a friend of ours. She's a friend of the family, that she had her son for a little while at that point.
Okay, so now this friend has had Erica's son
Yep.
for a little while.
Yep.
So that would have been a pretty big indicator that Erica's not okay.
Yep.
All right. So now you're aware. Now we're to 2018. We've done an intervention.
Mm-hmm.
She's ready to go, but the hospitals don't have a bed.
Mm-hmm.
And by that end of that weekend, she's gone.
Yep.
So now let's talk about from that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And let's take that time frame all the way to the hospitalization.
Okay. So around that, after she was upset with me for a while after the intervention. And the reason being is because they had me go pick her up, and she had no idea. And I had to drive her to it, which was it was the longest drive of my life.
Yeah, I bet.
So
and were you sort of having to be dishonest with her?
Yes.
So
Because she would have never went.
She took that personal.
Yep, she did. And that broke my heart.
And then that's okay.
Because I hated her being upset with me.
Well, you know what, though? I mean, think about this. Had you not done an intervention, I mean, you did like the biggest love action that a sister can do in that situation. And that's give her the opportunity to go get treatment. But we all know this. And if our listeners don't know this, because let me back up. I have people ask me all the time, what do I do? How can I get them treatment? And I back them up and I say, are they ready for treatment? Mm-hmm. Oh, no, they're not ready. Well, okay, then you're not going to have an outcome that is going to be a good outcome until they are ready. Mm-hmm. And so your intervention as a family was the absolute right thing to do, to say your piece and to say the things that I'm sure you all said. Mm-hmm. And what it has looked like for you as a family. But she wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm. And I could tell she wasn't ready. It made us all feel great that she wanted to go, or that she said she wanted to go.
Yeah. And I have every idea in that moment that she meant it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, opioids are powerful, and they play tricks on the brain.
Yeah.
And I say this probably in every podcast. Sean, do I say this in every podcast about Change Brain? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll just go back there to Change Brain.
That's another segment.
Yeah. So the part of the brain that does the decision-making in the brain, the mesolimbic system, is kind of turned off with drug use. And that's why you see cheating, lying, stealing, and indecision or indecisiveness. And so probably like in one fleeting moment, of course she wanted to get clean and not be living the life that she's living, right?
Yeah.
But her decision-making tool is turned off.
Yeah.
And those drugs are very powerful, and they tell her what to do. Mm-hmm. So
I know
if it makes you feel any better to know that.
Yeah. Knowledge is much better than just assuming.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's fast forward to what happened. What led to Erica's hospitalization?
So she had been feeling sick for a few days. We didn't really know all the cause of it until a little after. All I had known at that point, because it was my birthday weekend, and I hadn't heard from her, that's not like her. No matter what state she was ever in, I always heard from her on my birthday.
Okay.
So, and I had mentioned it to my mom. I'm like, it's weird. I didn't hear from her. I was like, she's never missed a birthday ever. And that's when my mom had told me, she's like, well, she wasn't feeling good for a while, to a point that because she was going to the clinic at this point.
Okay.
Missed a day. I don't know if I can say. You want me to say?
Say it, and we can
Okay.
take it out if we need to.
Used a dirty needle.
Oh, yeah, you can say it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
She
So
had,
go back.
okay. She had been sick and whatnot, used a dirty needle,
Okay.
and it caused an infection in her blood and in her heart. It was
Okay.
eating at her organs.
So she developed probably endocarditis?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a hard time with that word,
That
too.
is very common. Also, for our listeners, having no access to clean needles is a whole nother topic. Harm reduction is the process in which you provide clean needle usage to people that use IV drugs, to include diabetics, right? Like anyone who needs to inject any type of medication. And the use of dirty needles is causing an outbreak in things like endocarditis, hepatitis C, AIDS, and which causes and drives our healthcare costs through the roof. So there's a whole nother reason for providing clean needles, but I won't go off on that tangent. So that caused Erica to develop a life-threatening disease of her heart.
Yes. When she was in the hospital, it was not a pleasant experience at all. She was transferred to a new hospital. The first hospital she was in, the nurses didn't even want anything to do with her.
So there's a lot of stigma there. They were
big time.
Yep, because they saw her as a intravenous drug user.
Yes. Wouldn't give her dosing on time at all. Called her names. Which,
oh, no, I'm so sorry.
Which really just... I get angry.
No, of course you do. That's just so horrible. And I remember you telling me that, and me telling you my own experience with working with nurses that do that. That's been a big part of my career, is teaching stigma reduction. And I'm so sorry your family was a victim of that, and that's just terrible. So did you get to a hospital where she was treated kindly?
Yes.
That's so good.
The next hospital she was in was much better. The opioid issue there is, it was hard because going to the hospital, you can see it. It's all right out in the open there.
Now, is she in the ICU at this point?
Yes. They brought her to the ICU. And at first they weren't sure if they were gonna do a heart they did open heart surgery.
Okay. Wow. So she was very, very sick.
Yes.
And I'm just going to back up. I'm infuriated right now that she was an ICU patient treated like pure crap because she was an IV drug user. That just, I cannot tell you how angry I am thinking about that right now. So I want you to know I understand that, and makes me love what I do even more. But we're in a good place. She's going to have open heart surgery. And how did that go?
The surgery went well. I was actually up there at this point. I made it. It was like the day after the surgery. I was able to fly up there to be with her. And my other sister was able to fly in as well. We have a bunch of sisters. There's a herd of us.
Oh, that's awesome. That's such a lovely story. And were they all close with Erica, or was that extended family?
I would say, well, one of them was. The others are a lot younger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and unfortunately didn't really get to know Erica before.
Okay.
So,
that's unfortunate.
I had to kind of keep it separate for...
Well, I mean, too, if she was already really sick and they were much younger, I can see that.
Yep. So, but she and I were the closest because we were so close in age.
Yeah.
So.
Lived together a few times.
Yep.
Okay, so outcome of the open heart surgery at this point, to all you know, is going well.
They had set us in, brought the family into the family room, and the cardiologist and her doctor that in the ICU, I'm not sure what type of doctor he was, but they had brought us in there. And the cardiologist gave us such false hope, and I had called you on that. Yeah. Because it didn't make sense to me, and I was smart enough to know from you that yes, the heart surgery went great in the cardiologist's eyes. Yeah. But when the other doctor was showing us everything else,
the rest of the body system was not able to pick that good heart back up.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
I remember that conversation, which was tough for me to have with you.
Yes. But I knew that you wouldn't lie to me.
That's right.
You would tell me the truth.
Yeah. So what's our time frame now from the time that surgery happened and what ultimately happened? Let's build up to that.
A few days.
And did she end up on a ventilator?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because I feel like, how quickly was that happening?
So they had her on a ventilator right from the surgery.
But she never came off that ventilator.
No, she never woke up from the heart surgery.
Okay.
Once they put her under, and she had told my mom, if there's no chance or if I'm going to be a vegetable or anything, I don't want that kind of life. So granted, like they said, sorry.
No, that's okay.
They, unfortunately, you need all your other organs to survive.
So, got to support that heart, right?
Yeah.
So, ultimately, she had to be taken off life support. And were you a big decision maker in that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember having that conversation with you.
I was actually the one at the hospital that day because the doctors had told us, because they said you can't come every day because you're not going to get a different result. You got to give yourself a mental break.
Right.
So, one day my mom would go and then I went with my sisters and then my dad would go a different time.
Right.
Just so that someone was always there.
Right.
But when they finally made the decision, I was in the room by myself.
I'm so sorry.
They had brought me out and because my mom gave them permission to talk to me and show me. And so I called my family. I was like, you need to come up now. So
I'm so sorry, Ashley.
But when they showed me the chest X-ray, it was like there was nothing in there.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Those drugs they're bad news. And I want to thank you so much for sharing the story of Erica and getting to kind of bring some light to the good parts of her life and the light that she was able to shine into her daughter and son, and that she was well at times. And it's just a terrible, terrible drug. Mm-hmm. And I, again, want to thank you for being on the Clearly Well podcast. And Sean, take it away. I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. Clearly Well is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media.